Hello and welcome to From the BO End. This is the debrief for Burnley's defeat at Aston Villa. And I'm here with Paul Woodhouse, Justin Conley and Andrew Greaves with his shiny new Christmas present microphone, looking fully professional now. Those early episodes where it sounded like he was in an East German phone box are just a distant memory now. Fully teched up, Greavesy.
Yeah, hopefully this is going to sound crisp and I won't get any stick on up the Clarets from now on.
Excellent. Right, let's get into that game. We took 24 hours to sort of let our emotions settle after that one, because it was one where if you went on social media, people were raging. Even Vincent Kompany, normally so languid and calm after defeats this season, you could tell he was really upset about that one. Justin, overall impressions?
Well, it was another disappointment, wasn't it? Like the Liverpool game was a disappointment, but we're now disappointed that we're not getting anything out of these games because the performances are much better than they once were. I think against Villa, the big disappointment obviously is the two big decisions that went against us, the penalty and the sending off. I think the sending off changes the game. I think the penalty is a really weak, soft one, and if those decisions go our way instead of against us, then we're really in that game. And that's 2 games in a week against the 2 top sides in the Premier League where we don't look out of place. I think that's, it's about time we said that. We're halfway through the season now, and they've been working really hard towards this. So I think it bodes well for the second half of the season. I'm not as angry as I was yesterday, but I still think there's quite a lot to be angry about coming out of that game.
Yeah, I mean, Greavesy, on those decisions, we could throw another one in there as well, the handball with Carlos when Lyle Foster was going through, which VAR did look at, didn't it? And I know obviously it's outside the penalty area, but I presume they're looking, is it a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity? What did you make of that one and the other decisions?
Yeah, the handball one's a weird one because there's a train of thought that VAR can't get involved in that because it's outside the box. Now, I don't know if they were checking whether it was in the box. I don't know what the decision was being checked, whether it was going to be is it a penalty or isn't it a penalty, in or out the box. But I mean, the hand flicks up. It's Vincent said after the game, it's worse than the Sanderberg one that we got the goal chalked off at Forest for. I mean, Stuart Atwell, the less said about Stuart Atwell, and we seem to say this every week with referees, don't we? Oh, he's the worst of the lot. But yeah, Atwell, he's one of these personality refs, isn't he? Likes it all to be about him. I mean, the way he was looking, crouching before giving the penalty, you could tell he was gonna give it. Yeah, I've no real complaints over Berger's sending off because I think that's stupid of him, and I think I'd be disingenuous not to call him stupid, given the fact that I called Robert stupid earlier in the season when he got sent off for 2 bookings, and the second one was a giveaway. So I'm not sure Kompany has much to complain about there. The penalty, I mean, I don't know if anyone's checked on Duran because he looked in a bad way, didn't he? I mean, he went down like he'd been shot from the grassy knoll or whatever, didn't he? It's kind of the dive, which is what it is, let's be honest, the arch back, the kind of holding the ankle when he's caught the underside of his boot. If anything, I've done that before. It probably hurt Ramsey more than it hurt Duran. But yeah, Ramsey's a bit daft trying to take a touch inside his box, but it's just another tale of war when it comes to shite officials, isn't it?
Woody, have you calmed down? Were you raging yesterday after those decisions?
Absolutely livid, Simon. It was one of those curious games, wasn't it? That on the balance of play, we'd have been rather lucky to have nabbed a point. But if you look at the decisions that impacted the game fully, we could have quite easily come out of that winning 3-2, or at least definitely getting a point. And those decisions, whichever way we look at them, even in real time, that handball looks like a handball. And very rarely can you say that about a handball. The penalty, while you can give a good indication as to why it's been given, it's still extremely soft. He's hit him, he's caught him a little bit underneath his foot. Guy's realised he's been caught underneath his foot, then plants his foot, then decides to go down. And yeah, that's extremely soft to give it that moment in time. And all told, yeah, extremely disappointing result. But I think, as everybody said, this past 2 weeks, we've shown that we kind of now belong and can compete in this division, and not just with sides at the bottom of the table with the top two in the division. And it's just a shame that it might just be a little bit too late to start showing some of that.
Yeah, I mean, on those decisions, before we move on to the performance, I think the penalty, I sort of, looking at it again this morning, I'm thinking, like, he did take ages to make the decision, didn't he, as well, which left me at the time thinking, is he looking at this one and thinking, oh, he's made a big fuss, I better give it, and then VAR's going to look anyway. But he had a perfect view of it. He really did have an absolutely perfect view of it. He's in, credit to him for being in the right position for that one. But it is soft. And part of you thinks, like, there should be a degree of, I know this is like easy to say when it's happened to Burnley, but there should be a degree of common sense or justice in these things, where if a player gets the slightest touch and makes a massive meal of it, the making a massive meal of it should nullify the slight touch.
Yeah,
it should.
Yeah,
and sometimes it does. You see players, Raheem Sterling, because he so often has done this kind of thing, sometimes doesn't get given decisions because, when perhaps he should have done, because people are expecting him to have dived. I slightly dissent, Greavesy, on the Sander Berger one, in the sense that there used to be a time in football, and maybe it's just modern football, but there used to be a time in football where a ref would say to a player for something very minor, like a little shirt tug, and say, hey, you're on a yellow card, this is your last warning, another silly thing like that, and you're off. And I don't think anyone complained in those days about something like that. And now it's like, oh, that's an automatic yellow. A yellow's supposed to be for something pretty serious, serious foul play.
Well, it's inconsistency, isn't it? That's the problem. The problem is, you see, I've seen referees, fail to book somebody for a really much more obvious yellow card offence than that. I mean, just because they're on a second yellow and they don't want to send them off and ruin the game, and they don't. Even the stuff like kicking the ball away. There was a bit where Trafford just booted the ball into the stand towards the end of the game, and nothing. He wasn't booked for that or anything. Whether the ref didn't see it or what, but it just seems like things like that. They make the referees make different decisions according to what the different stage in the game was. And I don't understand why Berger's been treated as differently to the way that they treat other players. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
No,
I do agree on Simon, on your point there, Simon. I hadn't even thought of it like that. It was such a weird little. I mean, it's not even a full. It's not even a full shirt tug. It's kind of just he's pulled him back a little bit. It's a weird one. I just think you can't put yourself in that position because, we know nowadays that referees don't do that little kind of, look, you're on a booking, don't be daft. Next time, it'll be a second booking. And of course, Stuart Atwell's a Luton Town fan, so.
Are we having this conspiracy theory about him being a Luton fan? I'm not having that.
Supposedly a Luton fan. I don't know, but there we go. I'm not suggesting that Stuart Atwell's corrupt, but maybe the whole Premier League is. I don't know. Maybe the Everton fans are right.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I think what you are right about, Greavesy, though, is that it is really silly to be going around pulling shirts when you're on a yellow card. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Granted that. Yeah. Let's talk about the performance a bit then. So I think we can all agree with, and all Burnley fans will agree that we were sort of robbed a bit by the officials there. But in terms of the performance, I mean, my sort of thoughts at half time were, two incidents there that if we'd have got right, Lyle Foster took his disallowed goal so well, really composed finish, which was good to see. Offside because he just didn't check his run enough, and he was right on the halfway line as well. In fact, and with his speed, if he'd have stayed just that side of the line, he's still going through and scoring that goal. If he does that, that's a goal for Burnley. At the other end, both our fullbacks playing Watkins on, and by not being in a line and not doing a really basic thing that back lines are supposed to do and move up as a unit like that. Those two things go the other way, and the score's different. It's what Company's been talking about, isn't it? About getting those little details in, when Foster's not in the box, but as he says, in the two boxes. But overall, that first half performance, we seem to have done this in a few games now, don't we? Where we start quite slowly and quite badly in first halves, and then book up after half time. Woody, performance-wise, I mean, you're saying we're competing with a side there that's up in the top three in the Premier League. What impressed you most about that performance? Second half, I would imagine mostly, but overall, what impressed you most?
I thought even the first half, the fact that we didn't get overrun like we have done in other games previously, we tend to come out of the gate looking quite sharp, and then all of a sudden they work out after 5 or 10 minutes what it is that we're actually doing, and then start pushing up on us, and then start bullying us a little bit more. And then the first half tends to we tend to be quite fortunate to get to half time without too large a deficit, and we seem to hold our shape a lot better yesterday. We seem to hold them at bay quite nicely yesterday. We had their high press soared, barring those matter of fine margins and millimeters, etc. with Foster's toe. But I think the second half, the way that we continued to battle constantly after obviously going down to 10 men, etc., and put in a fabulous shift, all told. There was a lot to be impressed about yesterday, apart from the result.
Justin?
Yeah. I agree with all that. I think had the second half not been so eventful, I think we would be talking a lot about those individual mistakes. Those first two goals we conceded were really, really poor defensively. They got a bit lucky with that first one. I think it took a bit of a deflection, which without that may be our world-class goalkeeper gets to it and saves it. Second one, I mean, you can't be giving somebody a tap in on the edge of the 6-yard box, can you? That just should never happen at this level. That's just ridiculous. But the thing that impressed me the most about the whole thing is we actually scored a goal from a set piece. I can't remember the last time we did that. It was quite nicely worked as well. The header at the far post, and then Hamdouni's finish was fantastic. So, if we're starting to get that side of the game right, then things are going definitely in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, it was a great finish, I thought. A little bit, it's one of those that sort of gets dismissed as a sort of turned it in at the back post, as the journalists would say. But actually, physically, what he had to do to get over the top of that ball and everything, it was a pretty impressive finish. Greavesy, your thoughts on sort of positives and negatives in the performance?
Yeah, I mean, just picked out the second goal is the most disappointing, I think. The fact that Sanderberg's done the hard work, tracked Diaby right to the edge of the 6-yard box and then just left him. And him and Vitinho have just let him wander in front of them to tap home. That shouldn't be happening. The other thing we've got to remember, we lost Bear early doors, didn't we? I mean, you've got Delcourt coming on who, let's be honest, hasn't had much in the way of minutes, even for Anderlecht. I don't think he's played much football over the last couple of years anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think that Amdouni goal is really good because it's bouncing high. You know what I mean? He's got over and above it, like you say. And but for me, the biggest positive just Foster's pace and power, and his finish is all just brute force, isn't it? And how many times do we see? How many times have we had a Burnley striker who is that kind of big unit who just fights for everything and things like that? And Yeah, the slow starts, the weird kind of, you frustrate them for 10, 11 minutes and then you go crap for the next kind of 40 minutes or the next kind of 35 minutes and then come good again in the second half, a bit like we did against Liverpool, a bit like we were against Fulham. If we could patch together a 90-minute performance, then we're halfway there. And the project, as we like to call it, it's working. There are the improvements. That said, I don't know if I said this in our group or I was chatting to somebody last night in the pub about it. I do think now is probably a good chance to have a look at that back line, because I think fullbacks, to a certain extent, we've always had it with Peters and Bardsley. When they come into the side, they're good for a spell, and then they kind of reach the end of a shelf life and need a bit of time out. And I think Vitinho now, I think he's had 2 poorish games against Liverpool and Villa. I think it's probably time for Roberts to come back in at right back, Vitinho to drop out. And then in, 8, 9, 10 games, it's probably another swap because Roberts will reach the end of his kind of shelf life. And I think it is like that, I think, for fullbacks sometimes. I know a lot of managers change their fullbacks perhaps more than they change the centre-half pairings. But obviously the Bear injury is a bit of a worry, depending on the fitness of Alderkirk and Ekdal and, whoever else.
I don't think Vitinho's struggling, to be honest. I mean,
I thought he was poor yesterday. I thought he was really poor. I thought his positioning was bad. His final product we know is not great. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm kind of, I don't know, just getting into that kind of reading too much on the message boards about how poor he was. I don't know. But I thought he was poor yesterday. I thought he was questionable at times against Liverpool.
Any other thoughts on Vitinho? Because I was saying before we went on air, I was just saying like I've sort of had to eat a bit of humble pie because I didn't rate him. Like when we were looking at our options pre-season, I was making a big song and dance about how we need another backup to Connor Roberts because Vitinho's nowhere near good enough to Premier League, and I think he's proved me wrong. But I'm open to persuasion on that view. Obviously, Greaves has a different view. Would he?
To get on the fence, he did some good things and he did some bad things. And he has a tendency to give the ball away in transition with a very easy pass. And he does that every single game. Yesterday, he did it 2 or 3 times. But to your point that you were talking about, Sam, that kind of interception that he made towards the end of the game was fullback-alicious. That was as lovely as you're ever going to see. But, it's easy. He's one of those players that's quite easy to pick out things that he does wrong versus things that he does right, because there's always something.
What you're doing, Greavesy, really is you're suggesting we play musical fullbacks.
Well, that's it. It's just a shame we've not got as many fullbacks as we have wingers.
Yes.
We'll get onto wingers in a minute. But Foster, I mean, that was him back to his best. He hadn't. We said in the last couple of games that he looked like he'd come off a layoff. He didn't look sharp, but his finish as well. It's not just the strength and pace. The finish, was burying it away, and the disallowed goal as well with the composure he showed. I mean, that's a massive boost, isn't it? I mean, we were saying on the last pod, transfer window talk, the one thing we all agreed on was a centre forward. If Foster's back to that sort of form, do we still need one? I mean, we've only, there's only Jay as backup, really, isn't there? Obafemi doesn't seem to get a look in, really.
Yeah, I think we can always do it with more numbers in that position. But you're right; he was colossal yesterday. I think I was a bit disappointed with Villa playing such a high line and playing that horrible offside trap the whole time. I thought I was sort of tailor-made a bit for him and a bit more. If we'd been a bit smarter, we could have exploited that a bit better. I mean, let's be honest; you should never be offside 6 inches into the opposition's half, should you? Really? And that it was a shame. I mean, it was only like a couple of inches, wasn't it? It was a real shame that because it was a fantastic run and a great finish, but we could have done a bit more with that. But yeah, I think we do need someone back up because given the circumstances earlier in the season, we definitely don't want to put too much pressure on him. I think J-Rod did well when he came in. He's solid, isn't he? But he's a different kind of player, and if we need that bit more pace up front. I think if we're going to exploit the wide players to the full extent.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we've a lot of times this season we've looked at it and said, well, in the Dash era or Dash's teams did this that we're not doing. Dash's teams never really had, apart from maybe Andre Gray, who didn't really do it at Premier League level, but had that sort of pace up front like that makes such a difference. Because when we went route one, it was quite effective, wasn't it? And no doubt we'll still hear commentators saying next week that Vincent Kompany is sticking to his guns and he's not going to change the way he plays when our most effective moves have been long balls over the top. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think from a do we need another striker? I think it becomes a backup rather than a we need a Premier League ready striker who's going to get us X amount of goals. Because I think if you can keep fostering in that, and let's be honest, it was the Foster we saw at Luton and at Forest, and that kind of performance where he is all power and he causes people problems. I think the shifting has probably gone. The thinking's probably shifted from, right, we need to find goals from somewhere. Let's have a look in the foreign leagues at somebody who's perhaps doing quite well in the first half of the season, to, right, let's plan for Jay perhaps leaving in the summer. So it becomes more of that kind of thinking, I think, rather than we need somebody because Foster's back probably a month or so earlier than we expected him to. But as Justin says, his mental health is probably still quite fragile. Too much pressure and suddenly, we might be in a situation where we lose him again. Hopefully we won't, touch wood, but I think that would be the thinking now is, right, actually, Premier League proven strikers are very difficult to find in January, but we've got a bit more kind of flexibility in that thinking. And
Vincent did say in his press conference, we won't be signing any Premier League proven players because we can't afford them. So that was another reversion to the Dash era to hear that sort of talk, really. But talking of the transfer market, then let's move on. Although I have to say, I even though it's a defeat with bad refereeing decisions, I was left with a feeling after yesterday that mostly because of what Woody was saying, that we've been competitive against Liverpool and Aston Villa. I was left the most optimistic I've been this season after yesterday's game. We could have won that game. And not spawned it either, So
no, it's a massive shame that United let us down in the evening game, and gave Nottingham Forest 3 points that we could have well done without, couldn't we? Because we're 5 points off the pace now, which is a lot at this stage of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, the big picture is tough, isn't it? I think we're right. We've just got to take these games as they come and enjoy them for what they are, and it was good to see us compete and play like that. No question at all about the spirit. Anyway, that's for sure. Right, so a bit of news came in just before we started recording. News, speculation. Sasha Tabalieri, who's you may remember was on our podcast during the summer, the Belgian transfer guru. He's reported that Manuel Benson is on his way to Southampton in a loan deal with an obligation to buy. Which has upset people a little bit. Obviously, Manuel Benson, a player many people hold close to their hearts. And obviously, for what he did last season, including winning the title at Ewood Park. A bit of a surprise, but when you unpack it, perhaps makes some sense, in my opinion. But Justin, how do you feel about that?
Well, I thought he hadn't been playing much this season because he's been injured quite a lot. But maybe that's not the case. Obviously, we don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes. I don't know if he's not. Ultimately, if he's not going to be playing, then and a decent offer comes in for him, then why wouldn't you want to cash in on that? Southampton will have seen what he's capable of, playing for us last season, and they're still in with a shout. So maybe if they feel that he's capable of doing for them what he did for us, then they might pay a little bit more than they would hope to for him. I'd be very sad to see him go because he's provided us with some great moments, hasn't he? But even last season, he wasn't sort of consistently starting games, was he? So I just think if he's not going to play, then it makes sense to cash in on him now rather than wait until he's, got his value has dropped dramatically.
And what about that shirt?
Yeah, well, this is the big disappointment about it. I went to the club shop just before Christmas and bought my son, against my better judgment, a new home shirt with Benson's name on the back. So I'll be taking that round to Alan Pace's house next week for a refund.
Well, I think a member of my family will be joining you because my my cousin's got a little puppy a couple of weeks ago, who their family have named Benson. His son's also a big Burnley fan. So I think
I'll give him a lift.
Benson the puppy will be outside Alan Pace's house as well, with a plaintive look on his face. But Greavesy, what does it make sense? I mean, in Mission to Burnley, this one of the few real revelations that came out of it was companies saying to them, "We need to sell 4 players a year to make this model work." Is this the first of several? You think?
Yeah, and I think I think we get really sentimental about players, don't we? I think this is the thing, and if you look at what Benson did last year, I think a lot of this kind of disbelief that we'd even be in a position to sell him or let him go out on loan with an option to buy or an obligation to buy, it is purely based on Rovers away. Let's be honest, it's based on that. And I think that is not the way company will be thinking or Pace will be thinking. They'll be thinking that this is a player we bought for 4 million. We signed him up to that 5-year deal, which is probably, was probably always going to be triggered on promotion to bring his wages in line with what he'd agreed with his agent, etc. But it does mean that he has got, a lot of years left on his contract. Southampton could be looking at a, obligation to buy a 15, 16 million quid. That's a big return on a £4 million outlay or €4 million outlay. So, yeah, I mean, to me, he's not played as he this season. We don't know whether he can make the step up. He does appear to pick up injuries quite easily. Even last year, he had spells where he was kind of not in the squad due to injury, little kind of knocks and things like that. Let's be honest, most people thought he was shite at the start of the season. If you remember, his first couple of appearances and Watford away, everyone would, who've we signed? He's a right duffo. So people kind of have short memories. I think, this is the model. I'd be gutted to see him go, but it makes sense from a financial point of view. Zaroury's probably going to be next in it, let's be honest. If we can find a club, home or abroad, to take Zaroury on a similar kind of deal, to get him out of the Premier League squad, to allow us to bring players in, because we've got no wriggle room on that Premier League squad as it stands. We've got people like Benson and Zaroury who aren't getting a chance taking up squad numbers. And it also brings, potentially next summer when we've got to buy Magic Mike Trezor, because he played 5 minutes or whatever the deal was. So we now triggered an £18 million obligation. And they're going to want to bring money in, aren't they?
Is that what it was?
It was 5 games, I think. He had to make 5 appearances, and then all of a sudden we were obligated to buy him. And he made those kind of 5 short, kind of 7-minute appearances, didn't he? So he's probably played 35 minutes, and it's cost us 18 million quid. So I think it makes perfect financial sense. I'd be gutted to see him go, but it's the model, isn't it? That is the model.
Can we not sell Trezor for 18 and keep Benson?
Well, maybe, but I don't know if Benson is good enough for the Premier League. Might be quite controversial, but I don't see he's not had a chance, has he? Even though we now believe he's fit.
I see Woody's a little bit perturbed by some of this talk.
Oh no, not at all. I agree 100% with Greasy. My overarching thought about it is sentimentality. We're going from the Ewood thing, those 4 identical goals coming in the last minutes of games. We all got caught up in that, and that is what we remember. Benson, that's 37 appearances, but how many did he actually start in? Then you look at this season, 4 appearances, all from the subs bench, no contributions. Like where, are we seeing? We can't necessarily say whether he's a Premier League player, and therefore has he got, hamstrings like one rubber bands? We've absolutely no idea. And should he go to Southampton to get his fitness, etc.? Yeah, there's a question over this idea of obligation, but if you're turning €4 million into 18 million euros, then you've basically covered Trezeguet's fee, haven't you? One way or the other.
Great. Yeah. No, it does make sense from a business point of view, and I wonder where they're going to get the other three if their aim is to do four. Maybe that's a goal rather than an iron rule, of course. But it's I mean, the other thing about him was he was a bit of a super sub last year, really, for large stretches of the time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he kept doing this thing where he'd come off the bench for the last 20, 25, make a massive impact and make a massive difference, start a game and really not make an impact and get subbed off. That kept happening all the time. So when we remember the whole picture of him as well as the glory moments, but what glory moments? I mean, those consecutive goals were just ridiculous. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic stuff. Had you out of your seat wherever you were watching the game. The other bit of news to come out of the club on a strangely newsy New Year's Eve is that Charlie Adam, the academy coach and loan manager at Burnley, is going to Fleetwood Town as their manager, and Ross Wallace from his academy staff, former Burnley player, of course, is also heading out to the coast. Are we surprised at that, Greavesy?
No, I think, it seems like a good move for him. I think, one of the things that if we can get a reputation where we can develop coaches, as well as developing players, then that's got to be a good thing. I think, it came out of the blue a little bit. I know they sacked off Lee Johnson, having been on a really bad run. Charlie Adams' first managerial role. But yeah, him and Ross going across, across the coast, it looks a good move for them. It's probably enhances our reputation. I think Dean Marnie's probably the next coach on the rank to kind of move up and perhaps take on that role. So we have got a bit of an old boys network. I know Charlie Adam didn't play for us, but Ross Wallace did, in the kind of academy coaching ranks. So I think it's great. I think, if he goes away and turns that around and develops as a coach, you're always looking for who's going to be the next Burnley manager. I'm not saying Charlie Adam's going to be the next Burnley manager, but is he one in kind of 2 or 3 managers' time in 10 years where he's earned his stripes elsewhere, started with us, and suddenly we're in a position where he feels like coming back to Turf Moor, big job, his first big job, gives him a chance of, doing something. So yeah, I'm quite happy. I think it's, like I say, it's a slightly strange timing, very newsy New Year's Eve, but yeah, I'm quite happy. I think, fair play to him. It's a good role.
Any thoughts on that? Nah.
Not really.
No,
I didn't even know Ross
Yeah.
Wallace was there, to be honest. These backroom staff are a little bit of a mystery to me, but I think Greaves is right, isn't it? Also, if there's a pathway there, if people are paying attention to who we've got running running these other teams, then it makes it a little bit easier to attract people to those jobs if there's a pathway out of it towards managing another team. So I agree with Greaves here. It's all positive.
Indeed it is. Right. Well, we'll call it quits, I think. It's New Year's Eve. We've got things to do. And the listeners have got things to do as well, even though they'll be listening to this on New Year's Day, most likely. Do have a very, very happy New Year. And thank you once again for listening to us throughout our launch year, 2023. It's been fantastic fun. And we will be back to talk about the FA Cup clash at Tottenham Hotspur. That's coming up next. League-wise, it's Luton Town, a big one, a really must-win game, that one. But lots to talk about coming up in our next episode. Thanks very much for being with us. Have a great new year and all the best, and up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Watson.